The one and only multiverse presents a grand unified theory. Particle evolution and string theory. 1. Primal matter, space. 2. A black star supernova. 3. Polarized magnetic particle space. 4. Torus strings, bonded dark matter particles. 5. Evolved particles, proton, electron, neutron, and neutrino. 6. Collision, fission particles, quarks, leptons, bosons, hadrons, and fermions. Web page and video are not AI generated. Your host, Richard E. Noer. Primal matter, sand formulation. This evolutionary theory is unique to the multiverse because nobody has addressed what produced the spatial medium for light, heat, gravity, and magnetic waves. It was assumed that the universe started with a blast of pure energy in a vast expanse of nothing. Oh my, this from the get-go is suspicious. TM says not so fast. How do you spell assume? Where is the criteria for this belief? Okay, so what creates the spatial medium? Only the multiverse starts at the beginning. A black star supernova. B. First on the list is not energy. This is because energy can be created and eliminated, but matter cannot. So it is matter that's the basic material of existence, not energy. C. TM says there are two formulations of matter. They are primal matter, and dark matter particles. Sand and spheres of sand. The first one we will talk about is primal matter. At the very basic level, primal matter is the substance that can't be created or destroyed, and has height, width, and depth. Each tiny granule is super small and just above the Planck scale of measurable existence. How did you determine that matter is so small? The answer is simple, because matter and the movement that matter has, must be able to produce the vast expanse of space. This is the only scale of matter that has the ability to produce the amount of space that we observe, and not bigger chunks of matter. D. When tiny bits of primal matter move, vibrate, and collide with each other, it produces the second part of space. In other words, matter creates space, but its external energy is what produces more of it. What? Yes. Tiny matter grains can vibrate, move about, and bump into each other. This creates a spatial force that has height, width, and depth, but does not increase the amount of matter. So there are two spatial phenomena, matter, and the space that energetic matter creates. This means there can be a vast expanse of matter with energy. Now it gets interesting. TM says there is no vast expanse of nothing, because nothing has no height, width, or depth, but space does. So what's missing? It is energy and its spatial force. We call this force dark energy, or non-polarized space. So now there can be a medium of matter with an energetic force and no empty void. This space that is created is also called primal space. Now for a very important part about primal space. Primal space is not the dark matter C. That step hasn't been reached yet. Primal space has spatial properties, but it is not a polarized medium. Universal particle, UDMP, a fundamental structure of primal matter locked in a spherical shape by spinning energy. If the particle has no rotation, there will be no attracting, pushing effect. It is their spin that creates the north-south pole magnetism, that creates a one-way spatial pulling-pushing force, that creates the sphere. There is a huge part of the multiverse, that has these tiny compressed particles in a super-colossal black star. This could also be called a supersphere of concentrated matter and energy, active and potential. B. When primal matter and its space collides with the magnetic containment field of a spinning colossal black star, all rotation of perimeter particles of the star slow down, then stop. The attraction force of the superstar has been eliminated and a decompression force takes over. The star's gravity has been replaced with XCP dark energy, thus creating more and more mass as matter flies off the star. C. Because the superstar is still spinning, it transfers this energy to its expanding particles, thus creating super compressed tiny spinning spheres. D. the primal space is also caught up in this energy transfer, and makes even more tiny spheres with compressed spin energy. This is the only way that universal particles are created. They are cloned by compressed rotating sibling particles flying off the former black star, and each one has the enormous potential energy of the exploding supernova. As the newly created particles spin, expand, and evolve, they develop an internal and external, closed force field. A polarized magnetic force. This is what produces the vast expanse of space between particles, planets, stars, and galaxies, in the multiverse. Universal dark matter particle space, c. Primal matter and its non-polarizing space, plus dark matter particles and their magnetic force, is what makes up all of existence. There are no voids in between. This seems unbelievable because of the vastness of the multiverse. We have been conditioned to believe that space is a huge expanse of nothing, with particles and matter floating or traveling through it. As you will see, this cannot be the case. For space to be able to expand and contract, there must be a polar magnetic force. Solid matter particles can't inflate or deflate their matter, so it is dark energy that has to have this ability. For dark energy to do this, the tiny grains of matter must be moving. If they are still, like in a black star center, there is no flexible spatial force, but, if they spin, vibrate, or bang about, flexible space is a certainty. See, conclusion. 1. You cannot expand or compact the space that only matter creates, but, you can expand and create space around it. 2. Material movement is what creates space to move in. Active energy. 3. You can't have polar magnetism without a spinning community of primal matter spheres. 4. And finally it is the vast expanse of polarized space, that has spinning primal matter spheres, that creates the distance between planets, stars, and galaxies, not the vast expanse of nothing. A void. The misconceived void of space. Audible sound will not travel through air without air molecules. Light, heat, gravity, and magnetic waves will not travel in space without dark matter. Polarized space. A true void of space wouldn't have any energy or matter. It couldn't spin, expand, or contract by itself, therefore it would have no height, width, or depth. It is nothing, and, most certainly is not a hole in nothing. So, it is matter with its magnetic spatial force that does the spinning, attracting, and pushing. This means that all of dark matter space is a medium of magnetism and matter. There can be no vast expanse of nothing because, light, magnetic waves, gravity and anti-gravity occur between points of anywhere to everywhere. Now points. These energies cannot transverse a void, they need a medium to pass on their energy from particle to particle. Forget about packets of energy and matter, this idea is just too fanciful, and has no explanation for evolution or existence. Encyclopedia 103 defines void. Now that we have established the basic primal building blocks and the forces of space, it is time to explain how protons, electrons, and neutrons form. This is easy because we have the basics in place. Quarks, leptons, and bosons are not part of this process. They cannot in any stretch of the imagination evolve and combine to form pen particles, given the state of the universe at this point in time. The new string theory. Creating a proton. A pen particle. Proton simplified, partial configuration. Each red particle is spinning CW. The whole structure is rotating CW. The open CCW fields are not shown. When proton forming occurred after a black star supernova, some spinning highly energized universal particles started to group magnetically in the expanding dark matter C. Because of the individual particle spinning energy, some of their axis of rotation began lining up in a pole-to-pole-to-pole configuration. Next, because same direction rotation attracts, these particle poles influence each other. Eventually they will magnetically engage and form a magnetic string of particles. The poles of the individual universal particles in the string never actually touch because adjacent particles keep them ever so slightly apart. This is how a torus magnetic field is created. It's just like strands of pearls. All particles in the strings are synchronized and spin either CW or CCW, perpendicular to the plane they are in. These are some of the properties that torus fields have. They can also extend, get bigger, or form a more complex intertwining rope-sized chains. These intermixing string-like fields are the first structures to form after the black star supernova, and is what creates a foundation for protons. The proton, because of a general expansion direction, of all particles in this part of the universe, multitudes of corkscrew torus patterns evolve in the dark matter C. These are magnetic bonded strings of dark matter particles. Adjacent particles also align and complement the strings, thus forming thicker and longer multiple strands. Eventually an energetic looping rope can form. If these looping bonded fields wrap around themselves, the loops can close off from the rest of the sea and become magnetically bound. This is exactly how each proton forms. B. The protons now have CW looping bonded magnetic fields passing through a center axis, and CCW bonded fields that don't. These CCW fields are squeezed out, thus preventing them from closing their loops. TM calls this phenomena of energy and matter a composite, magnetically locked, torus structure. Because the CW looping yarn fields have more particles in exposure, the structure has a positive charge, and is now called a proton. C. The proton has its internal, external magnetic spin and flow, along with its own spatial force. It is a horn torus structure. D. The proton has both active and potential dark energy. The amount has been set at the precise moment of magnetic lock in evolutionary time. The sum of closed-chain fields spin CW, which in turn causes the whole proton structure also to rotate CW, but at a slower rate. E. The proton now has both active and potential energy, which in turn creates a unique polarized space, with an attraction, or repelling force, depending on the environment. The proton can influence other protons if it has more spinning compression, and is releasing this energy to its surroundings. Slowing XCP dark energy. F. Finally, as universal particles expand space further, the proton will develop more and more pulling force on neighboring particles. This is because the proton's spatial force is magnetically locked, but the energy of the dark matter sea is not. Because of this new development, and its profound relativity, a milestone of creation has been realized. Particle evolution has just created the first stage of gravity in this part of the cosmos. TM. Proton, antiproton. Because of the proton's torus spin energy is primarily CW, it causes the whole structure to also spin CW. Now it gets interesting. If the magnetic environment is strong and opposes the rotational direction of the proton, it can force it to rotate backwards. This in turn may or may not reverse the proton's internal magnetic energy. It all depends on the degree of compression and the persistence of the external magnetic forces of the environment. If the environment succeeds in reversing the proton's external spin, it can also reverse all its internal rotation force. This will change the proton into an antiproton. Much more on the antimatter page. Finally, TM predicts that the amount of matter in a proton's closed loops will always remain the same, but the size, magnetism, and gravity of the proton can change, mass. This is because it is made of universal particles that can expand, or contract its XCP dark energy. Also, the non-closed fields can add and shed particles. TM not only do spinning protons create torus fields in space, but spinning atomic nuclei in larger bodies produce them as well. The proton's quantum fields. Horn torus structure, locked and closed. Open torus fields in surrounding dark matter. Open ring fields in surrounding dark matter. The proton is a complex universal particle structure and is the fundamental building block of the whole multiverse. That is, if you don't count magnetic strings. It has a horn torus configuration. All this evolution complexity happens because the density, energy level, size, and orientation of universal particles in the dark matter sea is just right at this stage of a black star supernova expansion. The evolving proton is in balance with energies of the moment. It's sort of like in a rain cloud at a particular place in time, temperature, pressure, and amount of water vapor, etc. All those energies are synergetic. Because of the balance, all of the raindrops that develop are the same size. The developing proton would logically follow a similar evolution. The newly formed proton now consists of dark matter particles in a looping configuration, locked by the forces of magnetism. This means it can't add or subtract particles to its closed loops in response to energetic encounters, although it can still get bigger or smaller. This is because it is made of universal particles that can add to their non-closed fields. Also, don't forget that dark energy determines the volume and magnetic power of surrounding space. So protons are a product of their environment. At this point, the proton is independent and is free to move on its own. As you have already found out, just about everything in the universe is in motion of one kind or another. This is true for the proton. The proton has its internal energy, as well as external energy, force. When the whole proton spins on its axis, it will develop sympathetic magnetic fields in the surrounding sea of dark matter. These fields come in two flavors, torus fields and ring fields. The torus fields are pole-attracting, or emanating spinning energy streams of universal particles, that flow in and out from the proton's north-south poles. B. The ring fields are spinning circular fields of universal particles expanding outwards perpendicular to the axis of the rotating proton. Equatorial stacked fields. They are quantum in nature. These ring field structures are not closed, which means they can add or subtract dark matter particles. They also have a magnetic spin and flow, an attracting pushing force in the dark matter sea. A more in-depth discussion of quantum ring and torus fields are available on the quantum field page. Electron. A pen particle, notice its orientation. A simplified, partial configuration. Each green universal particle is spinning CCW. The whole structure is rotating CCW. The open CW fields are not shown. Spinning closed horn torus electron, with open quantum torus fields. The electron's torus and ring fields are swept away after formation. Electron, a tiny negatively charged structure of CCW looping, twine-sized strands of universal particles, passing through a center axis. Made from the looping energies of the proton's quantum ring fields. It also has a closed horn torus configuration, and resides orbiting in the outer ring fields of protons, or atoms. B. Each of the electron's closed bonded fields has CCW spin energy, which in turn, gives it a negative charge. C. The whole electron normally is rotating CCW, if not encountering contradicting forces. D. Because of the pole-to-pole-to-pole string nature of torus fields, produced by spinning atomic cores of atoms, the electron cannot, and does not orbit in these fields. It is repelled by them. The electron can only orbit or pass through ring fields. Creating an electron, we have established so far, that protons have a positive charge. This is because the dominating area of the proton's closed looping internal fields, rotate CW. A. When quantum ring fields of the proton form, it doesn't change the relative state of the proton, but it does, in step, change the quantum attraction repelling force. The proton in its quantum ring field still has a positive charge. Nature doesn't like this imbalance and forms a cloud of universal particles in the outer fields of the spinning nucleus. This cloud is considerably smaller and is in orbit of the proton system in a single plane. Because of the quantum field's gravitational and magnetic influence, the cloud develops CW and CCW, looping magnetic torus strings while being pulled along by the spinning nucleus, and its inner quantum fields. The spinning cloud is in a neutral magnetic corridor, and creates its own magnetic flow. The developing north and south poles of the electron are 90 degrees off the north and south poles of the whole atomic structure. This is because of the horizontal stacked rotation of the proton's ring fields, and their spin and flow energy. These new bonded magnetic fields of the developing electron will intertwine, extend, and eventually loop around. When this happens, a horn torus structure evolves and then only the CCW twine looping strands bond. Oh my, what do we have now? We have a locked horn torus proton, quantum ring fields, and a much smaller horn torus electron, with an opposite electric charge that's in orbit of the proton's outer ring fields. Quantum ring fields of the electron. If an electron was left alone in the dark matter sea and had little or no lateral motion, it would develop quantum ring fields just like the proton, but they would be super small, and with tiny intervals. Substantial ring fields don't develop for the electron because of its fast orbital motion. They are swept away. B. Because of the electron's tiny size and negative charge, the outer quantum fields of other atoms with a deficit of electrons or positive charge, will have quite an attraction for another electron, if there is a substantial difference in magnetic attraction. When one of these atoms snag an electron, it gets caught, and now has a new home until a changing environment forces the electron to relocate. Protons do not do the jumping from one atomic structure to another, thus balancing charges, only electrons do. Positron, now it gets interesting. The electron has both particle spin energy and different structural rotation energy. Normally the electron as a whole, is slowly rotating CCW, but, if it is magnetically forced, it can rotate CW, thus reversing its internal closed looping spin energy, and creating a positron. It all depends on the degree of compression and the persistence of external movement to make this happen. Usually, if the proton reverses its spin energy, the electron in quantum fields will follow. Electrons and atoms quantum ring fields. An electron orbits in a neutral magnetic corridor between outer ringed quantum fields of an atom. If an atom encounters more energy, it can add particles to its outer quantum fields, thus compacting the inner ones. This in turn, unbalances the structure. Now the electrons who are busy zipping about, have more restriction. To maintain their motion they must jump into a different corridor with less resistance, a quantum leap. This causes a disturbance in the atom's vibration. That's right, this is how spectral lines come into existence. Electron relocation works both ways. When an atom increases quantum fields, they jump outwards. When it loses energy, they jump inward, absorption lines, emission lines. Forget about the electron producing photons while quantum leaping. It is the vibration of the atom itself that produces light waves and spectral lines. The photon concept was created to explain how light travels in a spatial nothing, credibility level 2. Says, there is no evidence for photon creation, construction, reception, or propagation. Finally, it is important to note that a proton and its ring quantum fields made the electron and not a Big Bang, or a black star supernova. The electron is much smaller because in its development it was orbiting the proton system. Also, an electron is not pure energy, it has mass. It is not a massless particle like some scientists theorize. This is because only the spin energy of spherical particle matter can create polar magnetism, and an electric charge. You have to have matter to do this. The evolution of the electron has been simplified for understanding. The forming electron cloud is not only orbiting, but the proton and universal particles of the quantum ring fields are rotating with spin and flow, as well. All this movement has a very complex interaction of magnetism in the formation of the electron. Now for a fun coincidence. Is Uranus a planetary electron? What? Oh my! Proton, electron, neutron, neutrino, pen particles. Second, third, fourth, and fifth basic evolutionary particles. Don't forget magnetic strings are the first. Simplified horn torus configurations. The proton, electron, neutron, and neutrino are magnetically locked and closed, therefore, they cannot add or subtract more particles to their closed bonded fields, but they can still expand and contract because they are composed of dark matter particles. After the black star supernova, pen particles were created, not the quarks, leptons, bosons, hadrons, and fermions. These subatomic particles don't exist yet. The proton evolved naturally from the energies of a black star supernova debris, and is far denser than the electron. It does not have a nucleus, it has an axis. The rope-size magnetic looping fields rotate all around for 360 degrees, then only the CW rotating bonded fields go through a common axis at the center. It's sort of like a donut. The same structure applies to the electron, neutron, and neutrino, except for the differences in which size and rotational fields pass through the center. With the neutron and neutrino, both CW and CCW loop through the center axis. Neutron. Another pen particle. The neutron is a prime building block of the cosmos. It can link with protons if specific conditions are present. The neutron has no electric charge. It is a structure with CW and CCW closed bonded fields, passing through a center axis. It is made by compressing a proton until the CCW fields push their way through its center, and magnetically bond. The newly created neutron structure helps stabilize other protons and neutrons in an atomic nucleus. If a proton and neutron are forced close together, they can pair up without breaking their bonded fields. This is because of the attraction force of the neutron's CCW fields with the proton's open CCW fields. No closed loops of either structure breaks. This is because they magnetically couple but not physically. This bond is weaker because the CCW fields of the proton are not closed. The proton must maintain balance, therefore will resist losing its partially open fields. This in turn, is what keeps protons and neutrons together and overcomes the proton repelling force. That's right, this is the glue that binds the nucleus of an atom. No super strong bonded magnetic fields have been broken. This phenomena is called the weak nuclear force, it is not the strong force. The strong force is the individual strength that holds protons, electrons, and neutron torus formations together. Neutron quantum ring fields. Neutrons don't develop extensive external torus, quantum ring fields because it is electrically neutral, and has no unbalanced internal spin to make it rotate. Neutron-proton coupling. When the proton and neutron link together, there is no individual rotating going on, they become stationary to each other, but the pair now has collective spin energy. The proton and neutron still have their own internal structure and characteristics. What is remarkable about this is, the spinning, vibrating, magnetic atomic nucleus, now creates unique quantum torus and ring fields. When you add more protons and neutrons to spinning atomic nuclei, the quantum ring and torus fields that are created have unique quantum properties. In other words, atomic quantum fields are different for each element or isotope because of the magnetic fluctuations of the spinning nucleus. Finally, the neutron's matter will always be the same, but its size, gravity, and mass can change because of XCP dark energy. Also, it can never change back into a proton. B. A free unaccompanied neutron doesn't decay in minutes like some scientists think, it will last as long as the internal energy is functional. That's because, as with all structures in the universe, they are constantly being squeezed and stretched. Lastly, the neutron can pass right through containment or quantum fields with little or no restriction. This is the reason that scientists think the neutron decays so fast. It doesn't really, it just quickly flies away. Neutrino. Simplified compression neutrino. Last of the Penn particles. Standard model fission neutrinos. These are not evolutionary structures. Neutrino. A tiny neutrally charged structure of CW and CCW, looping twine-size magnetic bonded fields, passing through its center axis. It is made by compressing an electron. Neutrino internal torus fields. There is no doubt that a proton can be converted into a neutron by just the right compression. This means so can an electron. If an electron is caught in a high compression instance, it would also force the CW magnetic fields through its center, along with the CCW loops. Because the electrons are active in outer orbits of quantum ring fields, the environment for compression would be complicated, but it is certainly possible in such an instance as a star explosion. B. Neutrinos can't form by themselves because rotational and counter-rotational strings would cancel each other out in the larger magnetic field forming process. It would take an electron to form first. This is new thinking but is in perfect harmony with all the criteria set out by the multiverse. It is relative, fits into evolution and explains the observations of neutron and neutrino behavior. The neutrino once created can zip around space at will, because of its neutral charge. It is an amazing little particle, but, as of this writing, it has no known purpose in creating any major events of cosmic evolution. Finally, there seems to be confusion about neutrinos of the standard model and neutrinos of the multiverse. It is the prediction of TM, that a compression neutrino is a stable and closed structure and is an interstellar traveler. It was made by compressing an electron in such an event as a nova explosion. On the other hand, fission neutrinos, leptons, exotic neutrinos, are the result of collisions and splitting subatomic particles. This would be, breaking up protons, neutrons, and electrons into small pieces. When this happens, it creates tiny particles that have very different structures. They are similar in size and electric charge of standard model neutrinos, but are not the same construction, and they are unstable. These are the VE, VU, VT leptons. Because fission neutrinos didn't evolve by the harmonious pairing of fundamental matter, they try to balance out their systems after force separation, thus changing magnetic and structural properties in the process. This is why you could never create any protons, neutrons, or electrons from quarks, leptons, or bosons. This is because these subatomic particles didn't develop naturally, they are splinters of evolved particles. TM. A profound question. Can neutrinos bond with electrons? At this time there is no answer, but the question is very, very interesting. If this could happen, the environment to promote such a bond would be very rare indeed. QLBHF particles. Fission particles. Structures of destroyed, Penn particles. Yes, these are all particles, but they are not the building blocks of the cosmos. Quarks, leptons, bosons, or Hedrons and Fermions, are created by collisions that break apart fundamental structures, such as protons, neutrons, electrons. Penn particles. The resulting splinter groups are not in a magnetic lock state. They are highly unstable and immediately try to regroup. This means they can change electrical and magnetic configurations while stabilizing their composition. Most can only exist for very brief moments before they are reabsorbed into the dark matter sea, but some may achieve relative balance. There are thousands of these splinter particles with all kinds of magnetic properties because of the chance separation from the parent body. Therefore, fission particles most certainly didn't evolve by the pairing of basic spherical matter. They were brought into existence by sudden and violent fission energy, or, when extreme ripping currents destroy atomic nuclei, or, when an atomic neutron bomb explodes. Particle creation timeline. These are perpetual events that happen throughout the never-ending black star supernovas of the multiverse. 1. BSS. Black star supernova. 2. universal particle. Polarized space. 3. Torus strings. Pole-chained particles. 4. Evolution particles. Protons, electrons. 5. Compression particles. Neutrons and neutrinos. 6. Fragmented pen particles, atomic nuclei. Quarks, leptons, bosons, hadrons, fermions. In conclusion, it is logical to assume that compression neutrinos are relatively rare, while fragmented pen particles are not. The stable, compressed neutrinos, can easily be produced by XCP dark energy, in a star's supernova, or quantum field compression of a fusion reaction. On the other hand, energies of collisions, like nuclear fission, accelerators, and supernova explosions, are needed to create tiny, sub-fragmented particles. That's why the neutrino-like particles, leptons, evolved later on the timeline. Item 5 and 6. TMA footnote in particle evolution. When magnetic fields become closed loops, it is a very strong binding relationship. Strong nuclear force. That is why the proton, electron, neutron, and neutrino are locked and fixed systems. They do not add or shed universal particles to their closed loops for balance, although they can still get bigger or smaller. The atom is a magnetic, locked structure, but it is not closed. The atom can add or shed universal particles and increase or decrease the number of quantum ring, torus fields. This is what creates its balance. Your host, Richard E. Noer. Young me. Mini me. Email, noerastronomy@gmail.com. Here in a multiverse, our goal is to find the cosmic truth. No matter where, or how far it takes you, the universe truly does unify. If you get the basics right,